Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Davis from Engage Insight. I'm founder and director of Engage, and we are a compliance and business development consultancy. Over the last 5 years, we've been researching the retail investment advisor market and providing benchmarks around professional development for banks, wealth managers, IFAs, planners, and the like. And today is on this beautiful sunny day. Actually, I hope it's sunny where you are. We're really going to focus on one of the key areas which is coming down the line for us all on the 25th of May, which is the GDPR. And really, it's a sense check of understanding where you are with the GDPR. That rhymes. But also give you an idea of what the ICO are wanting and where you really need to be at this stage in your GDPR compliance journey. It is a cliff edge approach, but also we will be focused on what you need to be doing on a continuous basis post the 25th of May to make sure that you are compliant at all times. So basically, what we're looking to do is, first and foremost, give you some views on the technology that we're using. We use join.me. Hopefully you're all on. You should be able to see the icons at the top. We are recording this webinar today, so what we will do is post it onto our YouTube channel. But if you can't hear, then you'll be able to download that at pretty much straight after today. But also you can read through the, reading through, should I say, on that particular number, and that should then allow you in on the call. But try and make sure that your built-in audios are on, and you've turned your audio on, and that should really work from that perspective. Just a brief one on me. My name is Chris Davis. As I said, I started Engage 5 years ago, mainly in and around the RDR, but we've also built a proposition called Model Office, which is, as you'll see, a RegTech platform, which means that you can access and benchmark really where you sit against all the rules and regulations. Today we'll focus on the GDPR and how that works. So really the agenda is looking at the ICO, what they're looking for you as a business at this moment in time. And I'm finding out, some solutions, as I've mentioned, regarding how you can actually continuously ensure that you are maintaining your compliance on an ongoing basis. We, as I say, we research the market on a regular basis. Our latest benchmark survey was across, overall, we've researched over 600 firms, but the last one we did was across about 75 firms, and that was published in March. And back then, which is only a couple of months ago, we looked at 66% of firms were not GDPR ready. They were unsure or unconfident about some key issues across what we're going to talk about today. I would suggest that, as we work with IFAs, wealth managers and banks, we're seeing far more confidence coming into play once people get to grips around managing the project of getting GDPR compliant. Who is affected? Everybody is affected. It's, we're all in this together, so to speak. And really, it's concerning, it's worthwhile looking at this. It's any firm who possesses or processes data pertaining to an identifiable person, any firm who contacts those individuals by, phone, SMS, mail, email, any firm who tracks their engagement via e-shops, cookies, landing pages, and so forth. So, and there's another dimension to what we're talking about today called the PECR, the Privacy Electronic Communications Regulations, which I'll talk about a little while as well. It's worthwhile mentioning that you will have to register with the ICO, and there is an annual fee depending on what tier of firm that you are. It goes from £55 a year up to over £1,000 a year, depending on the size of firm and size of business that you are. So the first step that we're going to go through, the ICO have published 12 steps, and the first step is awareness. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on this because hopefully we're all very aware of what the GDPR is. You've all done a lot of good work on the Data Protection Act. The GDPR, adds a whole new layer on top of that regarding accountability for processing client personal data and people's personal data. But awareness is crucial. It's not just about individual awareness. Make sure your team is totally aware of what this is all about and the enormity of it, and make sure that they're all up to speed on what their roles are to ensure that everybody knows what they need to be doing. For example, what does a phishing email look like? What does whaling what does spearing mean, and all those type of things when we're looking at cybercrime. So all that's important when we talk about breaches, as we'll do it later on. But I'm sure that you are all completely aware of the main key issues: time frames for breach, 72 hours, rights, the new rights, obviously the right to be forgotten, data portability, gain explicit consent where necessary, and the lawful processes and bases that you're using. But we'll go through that in a little while. Document data is the next step, and really here what we're talking about is ensuring that you've documented all the personal data. So the first port of call with any project is to actually start with the end in mind. We're Prince2 qualified, and it's all about then bringing it back as a project into bite-sized chunks. And the really good place to start is here on documenting your data. And the way you can do that is through an information audit register. If you go on to if you've viewed our guide called GDPR Unwrapped, which if you want a copy, please email us and we'll send you a copy, which gives case studies, top tips and strategies about how we've helped firms with the GDPR, that you'll find that the IAR, the Information Asset Register, acts as your Bible. So that's really, really important. And really what we're looking at is an information audit across all the sales, the marketing, the payroll, the HR systems, the email systems, the social media, online chat if you're using that, looking at your servers and practice management technology, accounting systems, all the way through to if you're using cash flow modeling, ATR tools, attitude to risk tools, fund research tools, whatever it is that holds personal data in any shape or form, then you need to be mapping that out and where you're holding that data. So it's what information you hold, what is its purpose, where is it stored, and where is it shared. Information Asset Register, it's important to mention here that really what we've got is some do's and don'ts, which is taken straight out of our guide. So do's: agree the scope and objective, again map it out as a project. Use that. If you've got an existing risk register in the business, use that as a template. That's a really good place to start. Create a simple template with the class of personal data, sensitive data in there, cover digital and paper. Now, we were in with an IFA business a couple of months back, and they were saying, well, everything that we don't use a back office system, it's all paper and it's in that filing cabinet over there. It doesn't apply to us, does it? Yes, it does. Of course it does. So the whole process for these firms to go through to ensure that you're digital and you're marrying up with the paper information that you've got, the personal information that you've got for clients and prospects and so forth. Map the client offline and online journey, very important to do. Obviously we're in a game changer now with fintech, and you need to be looking at mapping all that out and looking at where the touch points are of where you're touching your clients and how you're communicating with your clients is important. And making your information asset register accessible to everybody and incentivize them to do it massively and to look at it and make sure they're accountable for the information that's on there and they understand it. Don't stick your head in the sand. Don't point the finger at IT. It's not just an IT issue. It's a team issue. It's a business issue. Don't expect a panacea solution. There's no silver bullet here. You need to keep calibrating, keep refreshing your IAR post the 25th of May this year. This is an example of our information asset register that we've put together. Again, if you want a copy of this, it's in our guide. Let us know. We can send that straight over to you. But you can see we're just mapping out key issues around the format, the purpose, location, etc. And then what we're mapping in there is really the key issues that you've got and how that's mapped across the business as you go forward. Communication. Well, this is a really key step when we're looking at the ICO. What they're wanting from you at this moment in time is making sure that you're hitting Article 12, which is ensuring that a concise, transparent, intelligible, and easy accessible form is being used to communicate your privacy notice and how you are processing your clients' personal data. Really important. And added on to that is Article 13, which is really looking at the requirements that you need, the contact details. We'll talk about people in a minute regarding data controller and data protection officer, but they're very much involved in this and what their roles are. You need to be very explicit about that. And really, Article 13 requires you to provide information on the point of collection if from a personal concern. And you really need to be looking at what are the identity and contact details, as mentioned, of the data controller and the people that you've registered with the ICO who are in control there. You need to look at the purpose of processing and legal basis. We'll talk about that in a minute. You need to be looking at legitimate interests of the controller, all the third parties involved. Categories of personal data is very important. So again, this plays back, actually, there's a lot of crossover. We do a lot of talking around, don't please get hung up with checklist tick box mentality around these things. It all fits together. So in this particular case, categories of personal data, if you've done work around MiFID II, and if you go back to the rule book, Prod 3.3, that's all about effectively product governance. And this is a similar process. What we need to ensure is that you've segmented your clients, you've got your categories of your data aligned in those particular segments. So in other words, what is the data that you're collating, and categorize that data accordingly. And if you've done some good work around MiFID II, that can actually play back into this as well. You need to be looking at retention periods for data and how that sits obviously against the regulatory rule book, because obviously the FCA will require in certain cases that you hold personal data for infinity and beyond. So, again, that needs to be married up, and that can be married up, as we'll talk about, in your legal basis or bases that you're using within your business. Existing of subject rights, right to withdraw consent at any time. So here we move into rights. So in your privacy notice, you need to be very explicit and clear that you understand what the rights are. Most importantly, a process that you have in place and mapped out if someone was to say, right, I want my data removed today, please. So there's all that stuff that subject access requests as well to their data is a new right. So from that perspective, then you need to be really understanding of how that is communicated to your clients in a clear way. Coming on to rights, from this perspective, really, this is the right to be informed, the right to access, the right to be forgotten, restrict processing, data portability, the right to object at any stage if they're not happy with the way they feel that their data is being used. Auto decision making is really, you need to be careful if you're using algorithms within technology that uses processes personal data. So a good example may be, I don't know, cash flow modeling. It could be ATR tools. So again, this comes down to your strong relationship as advisor firms and planner firms and retail investment advisors and wealth managers. You've all got really good relationships with your clients. So from that perspective, that shouldn't be an issue. But again, this comes back to what you've done on MiFID II regarding research and due diligence on the technology that you've got. You can play that in and roll that into this particular area to showcase, if ever the ICO come knocking, that you've got all that watertight within the business. Access requests. So if Joe Bloggs, your client, has a natter over the garden fence, and the neighbor basically says, you know what, I've heard about the GDPR stuff, you can actually remove your data, you can get more information about how they're holding your data, etc., etc. Well, you need to be very aware of this. Recital 63 of the ICO really stipulates where possible the controller should be able to provide remote access to a secure system, which would provide the data subject with direct access to his and her personal data. Now, obviously, in a very sensitive environment, we need to be careful because obviously, if someone's coming down this route, you need to ensure that they are the person they say they are. So checking ID before you're giving any form of access to personal data is imperative. And I would say you probably need a 4 eyes approach to this, someone else involved in this, or a system or a project, a framework. This goes back to your systems and controls, for example, in your back office systems, to ensure that you've got a process around this that you're going to protect from cybercrime, cyber criminals who are trying to remotely access personal data. Under the Data Protection Act, you have 40 days. And you can charge 10 quid for subject access requests. Now you've only got a month, and it should be free. But if you get excessive requests, and what can be classed as maybe unreasonable, then obviously you have a case for charging clients from that perspective. Again, there's more in our guide on this. We'll send that out to you if you want to have a look. Do's and don'ts on that particular area. No recital 63. Know the lawful basis, which we'll talk about shortly. that you're using, devise a process to ID the person we've talked about, provide secure remote access where you can into the systems that you're using. A good example of what is out there at the moment where this actually works well is if you've got client-facing technology like a client portal through a back office system, or there's many out there: Money Hub, Money Info, IO, Intelligent Office, Iris, and the rest. They offer pretty good solutions, and the most important thing from that point of view is encrypted. So you're touching all the bases from a GDPR point of view. And going back to your information asset register, once you've done your research and due diligence around these type of things, you slot that in there, and you make sure that you're fully aware of what these firms, your technology that you're outsourcing to, because they're the data processors, that they have done, that what they've got regarding the GDPR compliance approach. So that's important too. So link your data subject access request policy to your privacy notice, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Deal with requests within 1 month, as we talked about, and don't be unclear in the relationship between the individual and the data controller. Don't fudge the ID process. Don't make it hard, and don't take it personally. It's not you. It's just the fact that they've heard about this new thing that's coming over the hill, and they're probably going to want to explore it. But that's an opportunity for you to educate them on why you're holding the data, why it's important that you hold the data for compliance purposes, obviously, as well as other purposes, so that you can let them know about new opportunities, new investment opportunities, and insurance opportunities, etc., coming down the line. Lawful basis. This is kind of crucial. This is another real cornerstone to the GDPR, and I hope now you've done a lot of good work around this. There are 6 key areas. The most important areas really are consent. Now, the key area with consent is hard consent is needed in particular if you're marketing to new clients, prospects, as well as, I guess, existing clients. Now, a lot of you will have mature client banks. I know I used to be an IFA. I used to be a wealth manager. So, yeah, we always had mature client banks. We weren't actively seeking for new clients, but you might get a referral. You might get someone in who wants to, knocking on your door saying, I've heard good things about you. So from that perspective, you need to be careful about that, and you need to be, treat consent with the respect that it's due, and make it explicit. If you're going to use consent, make it very, very, very easy for people to understand what they're consenting to. Performance of a contract is important because, particularly with your existing client bank, they're all clients, they've all got contracts with you. So from that perspective, you could actually be saying, look, we need to hold your personal data because of the lawful basis, or one of the lawful bases that we're using is, it's necessary to offer you the services that we're offering you and to manage the business that you've got with us and the AUM. So from that perspective, that's important. And the other one is also legitimate interests. Now, a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, we are in a highly regulated environment, which we are. Legitimate interest is the default go-to lawful basis. Well, it might be. And again, all this needs to go into, you need to justify this in your privacy notice. But with legitimate interests, you could actually say, you know what, we do have legitimate interest to hold your data. And the issue with legitimate interest, if you're saying that and you're going down that route as the first base of call, if you like, for a lawful basis, with legitimate interest, do not forget, you also need to ensure that you're giving your clients a hard opt-out at any time. So that needs to be really clear in your privacy notice. So from that perspective, if you're using legitimate interest, you need to give them a hard opt-out, but also you have an education process to say, look, you do need to hold their data, because if they're going to pull out, their data, or they want to pull out their data at any particular time, then you can't continue to serve them. So that's really important. And what I'd emphasize again is, before the 20th of May, go back over your lawful basis, make sure you've got your head straight about what you're using and the processes that go into those lawful bases. But certainly number 1, number 2, number 6 are what we're seeing in the market are the main ones that are being viewed as important in our industry. So you, again, just go through that and take a look at it and see that you've got the comfort in your own business that you're actually using the lawful basis in the right way. Consent, this really is all about, it needs to be unambiguous, freely given, specific, informed. There needs to be a positive opt-in if you're using the opt-in, the consent, or a soft opt-in can be used, particularly if you're using legitimate interest as a lawful basis. You can use a soft opt-in. At the end of the day, they're all clients of yours, so they're already effectively opted in. So from that perspective, if you lose any legitimate interest or point to performance of a contract, then actually you're in a strong position. But that needs to be evidenced in your privacy notice. So that's very important. I would also argue that you need to be putting that into your terms and conditions of business, your terms of business with your client agreements. So at all times, always point back to the consent issue to ensure that clients have the comfort that they know why you're doing what you're doing with their personal data and why it's important that you need to hold that personal data at all times. Handling consents and do's and don'ts, again, taken from our guide. Do keep consent separate from your T's and C's, but I would argue that you need to actually put it in there, or at least put on your website, for example, that what you're doing with consent, to give them an idea of exactly where you are as a business and how you've ensured that you can actually evidence that you've got their consent. Use plain English, adopt a simple procedure for all to understand, provide methods to withdraw consent, document all requests, and be specific in your request for consent. Deal with the request within a month. So what that's saying is that you can't go down the route now of having pre-ticked boxes. It doesn't really apply to us in our industry in more ways than one. It's more the marketeers, and this is why the GDPR is really good, because hopefully it's going to stop these boiler room outfits and these hardcore marketeers with all the pre-ticked stuff coming out and trying to mug people into their products that they're trying to sell. Don't get technical and use jargon. We need to keep things in plain English, keep it simple. Don't obviously say use pre-select boxes. Don't make consent a precondition of your service. I know you won't, and you don't, but we are seeing some of those questions being asked out there. It doesn't have to happen from that perspective, as long as you've got your lawful basis properly mapped out. Don't be unclear on what the individual has consented to. Be very clear on what they're consenting to. And don't be unclear in the relationship between the individual and the data controller. Now, I'll just spend a minute on here. This is something I received on my Facebook feed recently. I'm a councillor with my local district council, and I received this through. I hadn't logged on to anything that mindfully. Now we all know about Facebook and data analytics and all that type of stuff that's going on at the moment. We need to be careful here, and this is all about what is called marketing and e-privacy regulation. And what the ICO wanted to do was revamp that, which is called the Private and Electronic Communications Regulations. They wanted to revamp it and bring that in also on the 25th of May and give a double whammy, if you like, because this is all about marketing calls, emails, text, faxes, cookies, security of communication services, and privacy around the traffic of data, the location of data, and such. So from that perspective, it's not really, I don't think, going to affect you. It's worthwhile knowing about. And if you are moving down the line that you are going to look at a section of clients or prospects, and you're going to start to market them on your ISAs or whatever it is, on inheritance tax planning, then you need to be mindful of this. And I would certainly make sure that you get your head around it, of how this works, and take advice as you need to. In this case, it's important to know that the law is effectively 16. The law is 18, and the children, what basically the ICO is saying is children is under 16, and basically you'll need parental consent from whoever has parental responsibility over children from that perspective. So again, just do another audit and make sure that you're categorizing the sensitive data, and I would class the children data as sensitive data, put that into your information asset register so you know which clients have children and which children's details are on your systems in that way. Now, breaches, really data breaches, a breach of security leading to accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure of or access to personal data. You now have 72 hours to actually get that breach reported to your authorized body. So that could be FCA, it could be ICO. So from that perspective, you need to ensure that you've now mapped out your procedures to do so. You might have I always talk about TalkTalk and what happened with TalkTalk a couple of years back, and they were affected. I think it was 157,000 of their clients' personal data was affected, and from that perspective, that was all because they hadn't encrypted their client data. So that's why I would urge you now, if you haven't, look at your back office systems, make sure it's all encrypted, look at client portals and the use of client portals. Email is a dying art now, and email is very, you can't be emailing, payroll, sensitive client data, personal data anymore. So that's why an encrypted technology system like a client portal can help enormously. I don't have any shares in client portals at all. We used to use one when I was based in Hong Kong for many years, way back in the early noughties. And we didn't use it for any of these reasons, but at the end of the day, it's actually a really good way of building a close relationship and maintaining and managing all the data protection issues that you need to from that perspective. So breaches, map out what you're going to do if it ever should happen, and make sure everybody across the business knows it, and make sure they're all educated. For example, as I've mentioned on phishing emails, whaling emails, and the like. So they understand what that looks like, and they need to report it to the person they need to report to. So this actually blends in just briefly to the SMNCR, the Senior Managers and Certification Regime, which is coming through next year, and surpassing APA and fit and proper. And this is about roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, and the data controller, which we'll talk about in a minute. The data controller in your business, whoever's appointed a data controller, you need one. They are empowered with knowing what the system is for, in this case, looking at breaches and how they report it. So here is a brief example of a data incident breach notification form, and it's a good idea to template it, out. And if you want a copy of it of our solution, we can send it over to you. But here, what we're saying is that it needs to be signed off by a director or the data controller, really. And you need to be, before it's released externally. But at the end of the day, you need to just map out, what's going to go in there, how it's going to go in. If you've mapped it out already, great, because if, God forbid, it happens, you know the system, and you can quickly do that within the time frame that you've got. Article 35 is worthwhile knowing about, because this is all really about protection of the data protection really by design and impact assessments. And really, this requires you to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect the data. And as a data controller in the business, you're going to be accountable for the security and accuracy of the data that you hold. So that is really important. As I've mentioned, email is dead in many ways. Fact finds, you can't really be emailing them anymore. Valuations, pay slips, P60s, whatever it would be, those days are kind of dying. So from that perspective, you need to have a rethink about how your data is now protected and how it's communicated, as we talked about. So what we've got here is an example of a data protection impact assessment form, conducted by what the data is, what the process and system name, and who is the data subject. Again, this is in our guide. Want a copy? Let us know. We'll send it out to you. And so you've got that, and you can use it within your business as you finally come up to the GDPR deadline. Now, data protection officer, when we're talking about roles and responsibilities, it's important to mention here that, I wouldn't suspect any of you would need a data protection officer in your business. Why? Because you've got less than 250 employees. Maybe you have, I don't know, never assume in life. But if you haven't, then really you've got to have a designate, and that designate would be the data controller. And the issue with the data controller is they need to have a really good relationship with the data processors. And if you're outsourcing your data processes, which a lot of you will, I guess, to third-party technologies like back-office systems, CRM systems, then you need to ensure that relationship's watertight in more ways than one. And this plays back into, for example, MiFID II, because on MiFID II, where you've got the 10% drop reporting rule now, you need to ensure that you've got a watertight relationship with your investment services, your investment management services, and your professional management services, because they will be duly have to report to your clients. They're your clients. You want to make sure that you're involved in that process to make sure that you've got the communications right between you. Same thing here. You need to have a really good relationship with the data controller and data processors. That's very, very important. International is really the last key step here that we'll talk about. And this is all about, the fact that, it doesn't matter if, you're outside the EU. Yes, it's an EU-based directive. It's coming through. Despite Brexit, it will be here. It also applies to organisations outside the EU that offer goods and services to individuals in the EU. So, you know, at the end of the day, it is far and wide reaching. So you could argue that's why, you know, Facebook have been found wanting. And if you're reading what's going on with Facebook at the moment, they're putting all sorts of communications on their system to try and raise awareness of what they're doing with personal data. And even though they're based in the States, it's important because they've got millions of users in the EU. So let me just take you through a solution for you here. This is a RegTech solution called Model Office that we've built over the last 3 years. Just to give you an idea, this is based on 5 keys that give you a good foundation for a compliant, client-centric and sustainable practice. But the key that we're going to focus on is your systems here, which is effectively looking at your back office systems and your data flows as you go through. So this is your systems, as you can see up here. And here we've got a question set, and each of the keys has a number of questions across all the business functions. In this particular business function, we're talking about data flows, quality and security. The question set here is data stress tested. Your data is stress tested and protected with an EU-based backup and security. You answer accordingly, depending on what the answer is available, and then you move forward. The GDPR, hopefully, is applicable. Now, if you're unsure at any time of what we're asking you in this system, we have pop-up resources like here that you can click on, and that will take you straight to the source. As you can see, we're going straight through to the ICO, and that gives you a really good idea of what they're asking, what they need at all times. And that's across all the regulations. So it will go to MiFID II, it will go to suitability requirements, pension transfer requirements, etc., as you go through. So you can see as you go through this, you know, that one is about the 6 lawful bases, so that will take you to the ICO definition of that to get a good idea of what that means and how that works. So that's very important too. And then as you move through, basically what you're going to get is a scoring system at the end, which gives you an idea of how well you are going against these key issues. And then what you'll get is steers and strategies about how to improve as you go through. So we'll just finish this off for you so you can see what we mean. So basically, we've answered all those question sets across the ICO, GDPR requirements. They will change over time. And here's the scoring system. And if you want to learn how to grow those scores across all the requirements, which isn't just the GDPR, as you can see on the Your Systems approach, but here's the GDPR. These are specific, bespoke steers and strategies the algorithm will kick out so you can improve your scores at all times with the information that we talked about. So here you go. The first one is a real link into our GDPR guide. So you can click on that and download the guide. Information asset registers there, data impact assessments there that we've talked about. Here you're talking about ensure your data controller role is given to the most appropriate staff member. And you can go straight through to the articles of the actual GDPR regulations. So this is the GDPR regulations from the ICO. So there you can go straight through to the source and get more information of how that works and what that means. Once you've finished the whole process, you get a regulatory dashboard like this, where we've got a chatbot sitting, and what she will do is basically give you more insights into understanding how you can improve your scores on an ongoing basis. So from that perspective, if we just go through to the dashboard for you on this one very briefly, what Mo basically will do is give you a good idea of how you can improve your scores. So here you've got data flows from that perspective. So really what we're doing here is giving you a good idea of where you sit against the rules and regulations. There's Mo, the chatbot, as you can see. What we're also doing, I'll just log in very briefly for you because it's nicely logged me out as ever. There we go. And then this will give you a better idea of what the chatbot can do. And what we're basically doing is ensuring that you, at all times, no matter what the regulations are, you can ask Mo a question. So tell me more about the GDPR. And what Mo is designed to do, she's designed around artificial intelligence. She will go out and she's empowered with all her resources. She'll do a high-level regulatory audit across your business. But here you're saying, Mo comes back with the information that we've requested in there. The ICO has a good overview. And there's the URL links there, but you can also put in client consent in here. And what Mo basically should do is, there you go, she's giving her take on what we've just talked about, and you can go back to, she gives you a link straight into the ICO news blog around client consent. So she's always going to give you resources on what's coming next with the GDPR, because there's lots of information going on there from that perspective. So hopefully that's given you a really good flavor for where you now need to be across all those 12 principles from the GDPR, from the ICO. If you're unsure about anything, don't be shy, email us, and you will then get the guide. If you haven't already seen it, we can do another webinar. We can send model office details to you, so you can have a go on the free version of this, which has some GDPR questions on there. Or we do on-site visits and audits as well, where we take a cross-sectional view, not just about the GDPR, but everything. But if it's just GDPR, we can help with that too. So hopefully that's giving you an idea. As I mentioned, where you should be. We've recorded this. It will appear on our YouTube RegTech channel. I'll send it out to you via email so you can watch it at your leisure over, hopefully, a beautiful bank holiday weekend coming up. But again, any questions, please don't be shy. Email them straight through. I'm more than happy to help. So thanks so much for spending the time with us today. Hopefully you haven't got too much work to do on a beautiful day like today, and hopefully we're going to get really great weather and you'll have a barbie out on Bank Holiday Monday. Thanks for your time.